Welcome to the Acclivity podcast, where we talk about what it really takes to thrive in your academic career and beyond. I am Dr. Loren M. Hill, knowledge coach, academic career strategist, and your guide for building a career that aligns with your expertise and your values. Welcome to season 5. I am deeply grateful to listeners, whether you've been here since season 1 or this is your first listen. Starting this podcast felt like a bold experience, and look, here we are in season 5. As I reflect on the journey this podcast has taken and the community it's built, I'm reminded that every season of growth in our careers is shaped by turning points, the kinds that don't always make it into your CV. Frankly, each of those moments has taught me something about success that no handbook or mentor or coach or team member really prepared me for. Honestly, there's some lessons from those chapters that I wish someone had told me sooner. So I want to take a moment to share 3 pivotal crossroads in my own academic life. Not the highlight reel, if you were, but the moments that stretched me, challenged me, and ultimately clarified what kind of scholar, leader, and coach I wanted to become. So let me share those with you now, sort of rapid fire style, so that you can take them with you into your own journey, and hopefully you will find them helpful. So let's start with the first one, my promotion from assistant to associate. And you all may remember that my career in the academy was what one of my very first guests, Dr. Patricia Arredondo, talked about, was the nonlinear path, right? So I started as adjunct and then moved into the academy in a more full-time position. I was also a director of research institute. And so some of those like twists and turns left me a bit reeling, but eventually when I did put forward my portfolio for promotion from assistant to associate, I got the letter and I felt validation, but I really felt exhausted. Nobody told me about the political, the layering, the loneliness, all of that stuff that the process could take you through. But what I did learn from that experience was really to document everything, not for defensiveness, but really for clarity. And so one of the things that I really try to impart upon people is to document everything. And we're going to come back to that in a second. So the next area that was sort of a crossroads in my career was stepping into a leadership position and becoming a chair. And leadership changed me. I like to really think that when you're in certain positions, particularly leadership, it brings out more of who you are. And sometimes we may need support in learning how to do new skills, leadership skills. And one of the things that I really had to learn how to say was to say no, and say no with confidence, and be able to negotiate in those hard moments and sit in that discomfort. I think that for me, being a woman of color, and just some of the cultural aspects of my intersectionality, is that I tend to say yes, even at my own expense. And so learning how to say no and then finding the space for talking about what some other options would be, I was supported in that. And I was supported in that just by taking different trainings, even talking to people who had sort of been there, done that, and finding out who my allies were. And I don't just mean peer allies, I mean allies who wanted to see me be successful in my administrative positions. So nobody really tells you how lonely that can be. And even though you have a seat at the leadership table, it can be a lonely seat at the table. And we'll come back to that too. The next crossroad in my career was leaving a university. Leaving wasn't easy, but staying would have cost me a lot more. People saw the move, but they didn't see the nights where I questioned myself, like, am I doing the right thing? The imposter syndrome came about. What's going to happen to me where I leave? And so it was a leap, and, dare I say, a leap of faith. And it ended up being a leap sort of into the unknown, but more so into the realm of possibilities. And so we'll come back to that in a moment as well. Now, let's dive into things nobody told me, but I wish someone had. So keep your receipts, right? You got to get a brag file. Remember when I talked earlier about documentation? Well, let me tell you, documentation is everything. And sometimes it's the only thing. People are busy, people forget. Even we forget what we've done. When you are used to working, and just getting the job done, we often forget all the good work that we've done. So documentation can help that. Now, even though you may be in an environment that's supportive, whether that's from colleagues or administrators, nobody knows the extent of your impact except for you. So, and I mean that sort of in totality, right? People may have an idea of like one-offs or things that you've done here or there, but the total package of you, you're the best person for that. And we're going to come back to that. So remember, keep a digital folder, keep a notebook, keep screenshots, keep email, just keep data, keep your receipts. Next, neutrality is a myth in leadership. Stand for something. Now, you may be in a position where, you have a neutral presentation because you're weighing which decision you're going to make. But please believe me that you should make a decision. And those decisions that you make for yourself in your leadership position should be based on something. Leadership without values is just management, and management without vision is just maintenance. People didn't need me to be neutral. They needed me to be fair, clear, and courageous. And I think I did a pretty good job on all of those points. Again, there were some things that I had to learn about leadership skills, but once I was able to get comfortable with that, it was real easy for me to make some decisions. Don't get me wrong, some were a little difficult, but some I was real clear about. Now, next, leaving doesn't erase your legacy, it expands it. Your legacy isn't tied to a building, a campus, or a title. Your legacy travels with you in everyday relationships, every student, every colleague, every staff, every person that you touch. And I'll even go so far as to say family members of students or, colleagues. And so think about expansion, and we'll come back to that as well. Your network is your career capital. So you want to cultivate that as much as possible. And remember, networks are relationships, and degrees will get you in the door. Relationships will keep you in the room, and those relationships will also get you in other rooms. So to the extent that you can, with care, be generous with your knowledge. It's your real currency. So have those reciprocal relationships and protect yourself as well. So this leads me to the next one. Boundaries are leadership tools, not personal preferences. Now, they may be informed by some of your personal preferences, but you need to have boundaries. And oftentimes, again, if I go back to, the pieces that make me me, those intersectionalities, sometimes boundaries can be a little difficult, but let me just tell you that the reality is boundaries aren't selfish. And they are not optional. They are strategies. Boundaries communicate clarity about what matters most to you, your team, and your mission. So really think about that. All of these things kind of go together, and these are lessons I've learned. These are things that I've worked with people about, and incorporating them at various times will help really propel you forward. So now what? All right. Even with all of those lessons learned, the world of higher education is changing faster than ever. I always talk about the changing landscape of higher ed, and I always use that sort of analogy because there are some pieces of the landscape that change very quickly. I mean, if there's some type of environmental catastrophe or something, that's very big. A few years ago, we had some rain here in Southern California, and 2 streets over, there were mudslides, right? That happened in an instant. But what someone who knows about landscapes will tell you is that that was bound to happen at some point due to what's going on in the environment, due to, more rain, not enough plants. There's a lot of things that go into it, right? So when you think about higher education, there are some things that seem to happen immediately, but really they have been brewing under the surface for a while. Point in case, the pandemic, right? So we're sort of on the other side of that, but many institutions had to pivot. Some survived. Not many were able to thrive in that. And we're still trying to figure out all that, what happened, right? What's the impact of that? There was some immediate, and then there's some that we won't know for years to come, right? So let's think about that. And then let's think about other things. Like there's the day-to-day things, whether that is the political environment, whether it's a health scare, whether it's whatever, right? Things seep into this area. Now, the rules, the expectations, and even the pathways to success look different today than when I started my career, or dare I say, my first degree, right? So having all of these experiences, I want to share with you where I believe academic careers are headed and what I'm coaching my clients to prepare for right now. Visibility versus perfection, right? There was a time where you kind of shot for this goal of, oh, here's what the perfect academician looks like. Okay, that is not achievable because there's no such thing as perfection, right? So, hey, stop waiting for it. Share your work while it's in progress. Be safe, but the point of sort of sharing your work is helping you to raise your visibility, right? So you'll be surprised just by having conversations about some of the ideas that are percolating and you talking across, whether that's talking across departments or talking to other colleagues at other school, or even because we're in a global environment, talk to somebody in a different department, on the other side of the planet. Who knows what might come up with. But the thing is, you want to be seen and you want to be findable. The days of being in your lab, with your head down, just doing your work, that will only get you so far. This brings me to my next step. Storytelling versus solo technical expertise. Translate your expertise into real stories. I mean, there are so many opportunities for us to do this now versus, years ago when I started my career. And know that people will remember the why, not just the what. And this is an interesting point to me because when I was doing some of my research, I would always want the stories. So we talk about quantitative and qualitative data, right? I think mixed design studies are super important and informative because, yeah, we can crunch the numbers, but wow, how compelling are those stories, right? So think about it in the same way. We can craft our story. It doesn't have to be a huge one, but let's start talking about ourselves, right? Now, the next area uh, that I think needs to be examined is, portfolio careers versus single track tenure dreams, right? Hybrid careers are going to become more the norm. And this is not something that's new, right? We've all heard for years about the scholar practitioner model, right? And whether you are a expert in the field or you're, uh, whatever else might be going on, people want to know, like, how is that relevant, right? So thinking about having your academic self plus your industry self makes it more compelling. It also makes you more marketable, right? Mix consulting, teaching, writing, and speaking. And man, you are really going to stand out, right? So the last area I kind of want to talk about in the, where I think the future is, and we're there now, right? Is institutions will change. This is like, if you can't count on anything else, you can count on change, right? Your clarity must be stronger than their policies. Let me say that again. Institutions will change, and your clarity must be stronger than their policies. Know who you are beyond your title because things can happen. Get clear on what you offer that no policy can take away. That is where your value lies. There's few other places that it lies as well, but that's really important. So my final thoughts on, this whole lessons learned and what people I wish would have told me and what I'm thinking about for the future. I'll leave you with this. Be visible, tell your story, build a portfolio life, and lead with clarity. Now, people come to the Acclivity for strategy, but they stay for clarity. We help people name their value, navigate career pivots, build plans that align with who they are becoming. And hopefully this is helpful for you. And if you want to work with me or my team, please visit theacclivity.com. We'd love to hear from you. And even beyond that, I'd like to know, what bold move is your future self waiting for you to make? DM me, email, tell me what's going on. And if you're ready for a guide, I'm ready to walk alongside with you. Here's to season 5, and here's to your boldest chapter yet.